All right. So the webinar is live. I hope everyone's good. Today I'm going to be speaking about my journey into data, and we'll go into a little bit more about what the world looks like and the company I work for, and also building a solution using machine learning. So my name is Luigi. I'm the head of data. I'm the head of data and analytics at the People Experience Hub. So the talk today is going to be a three-parter. I'll be talking about my journey. I'll be talking about what the People Experience Hub does, so you kind of get a bit more context around the solution that we're doing. And then I'll speak a little bit more about the solution itself and kind of some specifics around it. For everyone that's joined, I want you to know that the solution is around theme classification of free text, which I hope is a subject that is relevant to you guys. So I'll try and keep it short and sweet. If you have any questions, just please put it in the chat. If I can answer it there, I will. If not, I'll go back to it at the end of the presentation and answer your questions. So, head of data and analytics at the People Experience Hub. So what I do is I look after the data in various different aspects of it throughout the company. I get to work with the teams of client success, people science, DevOps. I also am in charge of leading the strategy on AI for our company. I get to work with clients to help extract insights from their data. And last but not least, I get to kind of be the bridge in between worlds, and I work on with everyone collaborating. And I also am responsible for the governance panel that we have, our governance meeting, where we look at all of our data science and AI solutions, and we'll discuss the ethical and impacts on clients and all of those implications there. So how that relates to the level 7. So before I kind of go into my journey, you should know that in the last 18 years, I've had the privilege to work at various different roles in various different working with data in various different ways. And so working at the People Experience Hub, I had the chance to essentially do my level 7, which I've graduated this year, and essentially deepen my knowledge and really formalize all of those years of practical knowledge into a qualification. Really kind of understand the foundation of machine learning, neural networks, ethics. Sharpen up my skills of being able to translate those complex ideas in different ways, in different formats. And it really helped to, it really helped me with my confidence in being able to lead AI projects end to end, from design to embedding, looking at the governance, the deployment, and really helped me bridge the gap between technical innovation and business impact. So straight into the journey. So my first role in the data world was as a data entry person. Essentially, I was hired to look after the data in different databases, and it was all to do within the retail world. It was all to do with pricing information. This was, a long time ago. And back then, the company that I worked for, which was a research company, they were doing something that was really revolutionary back then, which was they were web scraping pricing information and other types of information, and kind of creating this kind of business intelligence around all this information. And that's where I first started seeing the concept of kind of getting this data and refining it. And they were then presenting that back to some pretty big clients to help them with their strategies, their retail strategies, their pricing strategies, understand customer behavior, understand how customers, purchase products, etc. And then You know, one thing to kind of also add to that is this was around the 2008 financial crisis, and one of the things that definitely reflecting back on at that time is the need for more kind of data to back up your evidence, to back up your decision making. It really became something that was really important on a lot of companies' agendas. So it was that, and that's what I mean by being accidental, is suddenly this whole world became a priority, and they needed people like me to start looking at the data itself and help to curate that information. I then moved on to helping to estimate some of the gaps in the data, helping to predict what some of those customer behaviors were. So that was my foray into statistical analysis. I then moved on. I got the chance to really use data at various different levels and in various different roles. So looking back on it, you know, some of those habits that I think were really to my advantage. I don't want to sound like a cliche, but being curious about the impact that the data has, being curious about what it means to a customer, what value it has commercially, gamifying your experience, you know, for you gamers out there, when you are being curious and you're leveling up your skills in kind of all these different domains, it certainly feels like you're leveling up. And when you're delivering those incremental wins, it feels like there's this feedback loop where for every leveling up that you're doing, the value that you're able to add to the company that you're working for increases and increases, which is an amazing feeling. And, you know, learning from your surroundings. I, you know, always made sure that I spoke to experts in other fields to try and understand their constraints, their mechanics, their thinking patterns. I've always been really grateful and lucky to have mentors around me who just knew what they were talking about. And, you know, taking on courses, taking on new knowledges. Level 7 is definitely part of that, but also just not being afraid to learn new skills. So, and last but not least, you know, in terms of a reflection of my accidental beginnings, the fact that learning isn't linear. It's full of failures and successes. It's full of looking at things that you've already looked at, but from different perspectives, being able to communicate that knowledge, being able to be taught and teach in return. It kind of gives you that kind of circular moment type of feeling where you are in this constant motion, essentially. So, because we're not just talking about learning, but in this instance, and certainly in my role today, we're talking about leading. The three big things, big takeaways that I really try and remember at all times is really start with the problem. It's really, if you're kind of logically minded, or you like playing around with data, or you like, you know, making things happen, I guess, it's very tempting to look at the tools around you and look at the data sets that I have available to you, and kind of do what I like to call playing with Lego, which is to just, you know, at your heart's content, see what happens. But if you really want to drive that commercial value, you know, really try and start with a problem, really nail that problem down. And I say this in the background of, you know, an MIT report that has discovered that the first generation of most AI initiatives, 90% of them have failed. So, you know, really do think about your problem. I know that's something that is covered in that course earlier on, but it's certainly something that has always stuck with me throughout my course and when doing my projects and even past my course and now where I am. So yeah, really think about that. Focusing on the outcomes. So you might have different problems that you identify, but the truth is they're not all equal, and some of them might have a greater impact in your organization, whether it's internally or for me externally. You know, it's really important to make sure that you pick a problem that has a real impact on both of those things. So, you know, do take that into consideration. And I know I've talked about collaboration already, but, you know, there are people out there that are just brimming with knowledge, and you being able to understand their world and bridging that, and also applying the concepts of data science that you learn on this course is really it's catalytic, as in it will really transform how your project runs. It will really add value to what it is that you're doing. So, please make sure that if you are leading the project, or if you're doing that, make sure you think about collaboration. So I'm going to start giving you some context. So to help you understand a little bit more about the team classification. So the People Experience Hub, what do we do? So in a nutshell, what we try to do is we try and provide evidence-based insights to help organizations create great people experiences. Ultimately, a great people experience will deliver better outcomes for the company, and it's all very interlinked. And so therefore, we're really trying to take that information and give that value back to the customer. And it's not just a product, it's a partnership. So we will also work alongside companies to do additional work, additional analysis, whether it's statistical in nature, whether it's tweaking the model to try and get some more advanced insight and stuff like that. So there is a BAU nature to it, but there is also a custom nature to it. So where I fit in, as I described before, I get to be in the middle of it, which is great. I get to see the impact of the data pipelines, the engineering that goes on, the transformations that go on. I get to do some R&D on some pretty exciting projects, and to try and improve our product and drive our AI strategy. And the other background information I want you to also think about in this presentation is our framework, which we call PX3. It's a think, feel, do framework, and essentially it's a way to think about outcomes such as engagement and measure what people are thinking, how people are feeling, and how that then drives the behavior that you want to drive at work. So that's very much the background of the solution I'm talking about today. And the challenge. So a little bit more context. So the challenge really is, we're trying to classify free text. As we know, free text is very tough to really sometimes extract insight from. And one of the things we knew out of the box is we wanted something that was robust. The context of this solution that I'm talking about, we originally had a third-party services that did the theme classification, but they decided to exit the market, and within a very short notice, I'm talking about 1-2 months. So we needed to have some sort of replacement there, because otherwise it would have just meant that we just really weren't that competitive against with our offering. Looking back on it, the original service had plenty of shortcomings. I'll talk about a little bit more about that later. And the kind of the hanging fruit that the opportunity there was to try and get better insights. If we weren't really happy with a third-party classification in the first place, let's try and do something that's going to give us something a bit more. And so then circling back on the shortcomings of generic solutions is, in the field that we're in the market that we're in, there is just no domain-specific models that exist to really provide that insight. If you do end up going for a generic solution, there is very little control around knowing how the model works, or improving the performance of the model, or making it more tailored to your needs. And what there is available is just not really that good. And insights being too generic or too high level. The theme classification tool that says, the survey is an engagement survey, and one of the outcomes is engagement. It's not really that insightful, and really doesn't help the customer drive actions. So that's another kind of con. And there is no kind of, without getting into the philosophy of software development, there is no real integration with the rest of the platform. It just feels like a bolt-on analytical tool, and it doesn't really fit the narrative or really fit into what it is that we're trying to do for our customers. So, practical approach. So within the time that we started doing this research, we thought, okay, well, it's worth doing a bit of a rec on a 360 of what everything looks like and how we can use and leverage different AI technologies. So the first thing we did is we went to the marketplace to look at different NLP solutions. It became very apparent that there was a spectrum of solutions which were either not expensive to adopt, but really didn't give anything meaningful, and the ones that were extremely expensive but didn't do exactly what you wanted them to do. So what was the point? We then explored the very manual rule-based categorization. So getting a dictionary out, understanding what categories it is that we wanted to be able to kind of classify, what their synonyms were, and it became very quickly apparent that doing something with that type of approach didn't really pick up on the nuance of our domain, didn't really pick up on the nuance of how certain things are expressed in language, and how people tell you that they're feeling or thinking a certain thing. And it was also going to be very high maintenance type of project, so we didn't really think that was the right solution. We did some unsupervised algorithms to understand how words cluster and meanings and stuff like that. I think they have their place, but certainly not for what we were trying to achieve. And so yeah, we put that to the side. We explored LLMs, and I'll be honest, that in itself, exploring LLMs could be its own presentation. But ultimately, the key takeaways from that is either your model was either the model is humongous and you have to spin that up every time, or it's inconsistent, or smaller models are just not able to do the task, or the attention window is not big enough. And there was always some type of constraint that meant that we couldn't reliably extract that insight for our customer, which ultimately led to the first attempt at kind of designing a neural network, which was long short-term memory, a recurrent neural network, so LSTM. You guys will certainly see that within the course. I know that it tends to be used for, it's been used successfully for text analysis, it's been used successfully for certain types of predictions and stuff like that. But ultimately, what we ended up going for was just creating a neural network from scratch and understanding the various different parameters. If I was to really say what wasn't that good with LSTM, is that just there didn't seem to be a way to improve the model beyond its initial prototype, and that became a bit of a dead end for our domain and what we were trying to do. So an additional kind of understanding and kind of what we wanted to make sure this neural network had. So we wanted to align it to our PX3 framework. So again, we wanted to align to categories that exist within thinking, feeling, and doing. We felt that that would have a much more powerful narrative effect, especially because of the way that integrates with the rest of our product. The data, we curated it ourselves. We really went back down to basics and understood what each category meant, why those categories existed. It helped us to actually think about those categories in a non-statistical way, and has led to some further research, which we'll be working on in the future. And we also wanted to make sure that within the design and launching of this model, we had a human in the loop. We wanted to make sure that we revised some of those some of the results of the prototype, and we wanted to find a process which also helped to kind of better the model and make sure that it looked at edge cases, make sure that it detected any model drift, and to help it continuously improve, because again, we are working within our domain. So get onto the exciting part, which is the neural network itself. Um, it's these are kind of I've chosen these titles to really help you guys think about the various different things that you can do within the neural network. Sorry, I'm just checking in the chat because I've seen it's going off. Yeah, so various different kind of levers, so to speak, that you can, let's say, help to configure your neural network. So I'll start at the very beginning. So embeddings, for those that don't know, they're just numerical representations of text. There are various different embedding strategies that you guys should think about. And I'll try and give you a spectrum. So all the way from the beginning of using a kind of a randomized embedding model that just represents words into vectors, all the way to using an embedding model that already exists. And for those courageous types, to creating your own embedding model. So again, you'll definitely pick up the skills in the course to be able to do what you need to do. The intermediate layers, what will you be using as your activation functions? Those are important to introduce that non-linearity to help your model really understand complex relationships and help to understand how they emerge. Will you have regularization? There are different techniques such as dropout or weight penalties that will help you prevent overfitting and will help your model learn better. What loss function will you use? So we did a multi-label classification model. So we went for a sigmoid function to try and give us outputs and probabilities instead of zeros and ones. Metrics, how will you define accuracy? That's a very big question. In fact, a lot of, in order to get from prototype to the first model in production, we had to really look at the metrics, really understand what the metrics were telling us. Will you be using AUC scores? Will you be using F1 scores? Does your case model need blue scores or bleu scores if you're doing translations? And how does that, how do you, whatever metric you end up using, that is what you'll be looking at when you start tinkering away with your neural network. And then training strategies, what is the optimum grain in the scent? What optimizer will you be using? What will you use something out of the gate, or are you gonna start tweaking around with the decay rate and etc. So, and then the part that is really important once you feel like you've gotten to, okay, so I've done my prototype, I've tweaked around, I want to do some bit more understanding around how it behaves, how it works. Let's not forget, neural networks are a little bit of a black box. There's a lot of research going on at the moment in the world around how to understand them. So definitely make sure you keep up to date with that and see what you can implement. Techniques such as Lyman Shaps that are taught in the course are, were certainly fundamental to me, to helping me understand the behavior of my neural network. Don't be afraid, if you're doing thing classifications, don't be afraid to get rid of some categories or group them up into higher ones, or break some down, or and really and start retraining the model within those different configurations as well. Because at the end of the day, there is a certain sometimes in AI there's an expectation that you can do everything, but you have to also be realistic around the models that you're providing. I think we started off with 50 wanting, I think we started off with something like 60 plus categories that we wanted, and I think we're down to like something around the 20 mark. So think about how that impacts your model and impacts your accuracy. Certainly in this scenario, we played around with different threshold results, understanding how different thresholds and affected the results and what insights were drawn from that. And with all of those changes in mind and all of those tweaking in mind, we were able to get from prototype with an F1 score of 0.46 to all the way to 0.76. So there is, that tweaking and that evolving your let's say your solution really is important and really will help shape what it is that you're doing. So, okay. Impact. So what has been the impact of going through this one project? Okay, so first of all, it built up our capability as a company. We went from a company that didn't know how to implement AI to one that now does, one that can and does, and is now looking into the future of what else we can do. Again, that word collaboration. We've really helped. This project has really helped to forge the understanding of, let's say, the theory of organizational psychology behind what it is that we're doing, and has helped to also bridge, the type of actions that we take to drive outcomes that we want for our customers. Another impact is this is our first foray into a domain-specific model. Again, like, as I said, in the marketplace, this doesn't exist, and so we really are, going into that kind of cutting edge type of world and doing something that our competitors just simply aren't doing. And again, insights for our customers. That is, it is essentially what we want, which is to be able to really shape the narrative and really understand the nuances of those insights and how that can help the customer. And last but not least, I call this compounded insights, and this wider strategy of, okay, well, we've designed this AI product. What other AI products can we design? We've designed this AI product with the PX3 framework in mind. Our next AI product will also think about the PX3 product, but also about this model, and then the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. And what we're starting to find is we're really, kind of multiplying that value and really refining the data into the next level, into its best and purest form for ourselves and the customer. So, sorry, feel like I've been talking for a long time. Lessons and advice. So, closing thoughts. I don't want to sound like a motivational poster, but in life, widen your horizons, create choices for yourself. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Stay learning, experiment, evolve your solution, evolve yourself. As I said before, learning is not linear. In work and within your network, making sure you're sharing those lessons, failures and successes, really tell your story. In projects, obsess over the nature of your problem. Make sure you nail the why. Make sure you're not afraid of stakeholder management. Make sure you think about those foundations that are in the course around adjusting your communication and outlining clear expectations and being transparent. And when you're building machine learning models, my mentor currently, Rob, he always tells me not to boil the ocean. And this is true with the first machine learning models you're going to start building, the first prototypes you're going to start building. Start with something small, deliver results. Make sure you're thinking about, the feedback system to help validate and improve the model, and make sure you're using the right metrics to measure your accuracy. Now that's the end of the presentation. Do we have any questions? Okay, so I'm just going through the chat. Let me see. Okay, I think the first question is, how do your customers gain confidence in neural networks? Was there any time you needed to convince them that neural networks work? How did you do it? Okay, great question. So, first of all, in the landscape of our industry, AI is used. So that's that's a given fact. So, you know, if that's the background of, let's say, of the question. And so if you are developing an ML model that is doing or a neural network, and your client comes back with, well, neural networks are a black box, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have to make sure that the governance that sits behind your ML model is in place. You have to make sure that, you know, you've done your due diligence, you've tried to understand how your model behaves, and you've actually taken the model through rigorous testing, and there's ways to showcase what that looks like. So in terms of customers, you know, again, that will depend whether it's an internal customer or whether it's a external customer, but there is always a way to communicate your ability to kind of develop that neural network, and to kind of explain that, you know, really, truly, no one's got it perfect. There are just different ways that these models behave, and this is how your model behaves, and this is what you're in control of. And as long as you've got the right backing behind you, as long as you've got the right data sets, and you're doing the process of all of this correctly, you shouldn't be afraid to, and you should be quite straightforward to convince those customers. I hope that answers your question. With all this jargon and specific language, how do you avoid your Emperor's Clothes syndrome? Well, you have to know who you're talking to. I think this comes back down to communication. It's very easy for a data scientist to just talk about accuracy and talk about F1 scores, and that means absolutely nothing to no one outside of data science. So there is definitely a little bit of an educational piece. I think there's definitely, especially as the head of data and analytics, I've had to make many a presentation, get people together talking, and really understand from their point of view what their risks are, and how the world of let's say data science translates to what those risks are, and help to build analogies together. And again, it goes back to that collaboration piece. You really have to try and build that bridge, and help them understand within their own world what it is that that specific machine learning model is doing. That's my advice to you. Is this your EPA project? Did the level 7 apprenticeship equip you with the skills required to build a model? Yes and yes. I guess that, you know, the level 7 apprenticeship gave me the foundation. It gave me the confidence to lead the project. It gave me all the building blocks I needed to be able to do the project. And it also gave me the foundation I needed to learn the additional things I needed to make this project a reality. Some of the rest of the stuff that I did today, I had to figure out for myself, but certainly all the foundations you need to be able to kind of create this sort of project was certainly in the course. So yes. How does an L3 data citizen equips one for the future? What would you recommend the next step in the learning journey? Okay. Let me think how to answer that. First of all, I think, you know, back in the day, shall I say, where the data world and the marketing all around it didn't exist, the reason why this title is this presentation's title, Accidental Beginnings, is because I was almost reaching out in the dark in terms of what was available, what was possible, and etc. etc. So I think in today's day and age, there are more formalized pathways when it comes to starting as a data citizen and then moving forward. I think it certainly depends on the company that you work for and companies you intend to work for. It certainly depends on your interests. You know, there is a if you want to go into this type of, let's say, data science and pathway, you are certainly going to need to be thinking about what types of projects you're going to want to shadow, or you're going to want to get involved in, that is actually using data practically and converting that into insight, evidence, etc., etc. But sometimes people that work with data prefer the engineering aspect of it, and that's more related towards the computer science of it. And there are different pathways to that as well. So, you know, you can certainly go from a data citizen and realize, actually, I prefer designing the pipelines and getting stuck with complex works, and that is a whole other thing. There is also, you know, people that you can go towards a more business analysis role and kind of understand the product a bit more, become a product manager and understand the world of AI, data science, understand the terminology behind it, and help to kind of bridge that gap between stakeholders and the people within DevOps, ML Ops, and etc. etc. Certainly, if you want to go for a more traditional route, you know, increasing your data analysis skills, going from a level 3 to level 4, again, requires you to look after some data sources and kind of going down that route. So there's with that many unknowns, I'm just forced to kind of explain all the different paths, but that's kind of what you're looking at. I am also happy if a little bit of Python works for me. Don't worry, I'm there with you. Were there any parts of the apprenticeship that were especially challenging for you? You know what? I think and maybe this is just me. I like to look at the end. When I start something, I like to look at the end, see where I'm going, and kind of do things that way, which sometimes doesn't necessarily match that traditional educational methods. However, the biggest advice I can say is, if you stay consistent and you stay on top of things, there's nothing that should surprise you or that you should feel like, oh, okay, I'm out of my depth. Very early on, you know, in the course, you cover the maths behind data science and stuff. And although there are complex subjects, I think they're really well explained, and there's nothing out there that is a concept that someone couldn't necessarily understand if they put their mind to it. And there is maybe a stage in the apprenticeship where maybe you're learning all these things and you don't necessarily know how they all fit together, but there is that clicking moment. What I will add to that is, you know, during my apprenticeship, I had twins, and the apprenticeship was very accommodating and helped me with all of that out. So that's probably the toughest thing I had when it came to doing the course. But, you know, Cambridge Park were really behind me and really helped me to kind of with all of that, you know. So, and then throughout the journey, maybe going through my gateway, EPA, and all of that stuff, they handed me over to my data mentor, and he was amazing. And so, yeah, so I think there are of course challenging bits, but you get the right support, and there is a strategy behind there to really help you with that. My question is what are your top resources other than AI? This could be project related or general interest, blogs, cheat sheets, video channels, newsletters. Okay, cool. So it's a very good question. So, like I said, stay learning. I would say my biggest friend in all of this is probably YouTube. I know this maybe a bit of a cop out answers, but there are excellent channels out there that are looking and actively analyzing research papers that are happening in the industry. So definitely keep your pulse on the industry and how AI is growing. Try not to go for the people that, you know, are kind of like information merchants and repeat like parrots what everyone else is saying. I think there are, you know, and try not to always make it relevant to your domain. Try and make it relevant to other domains as well. If I had to shout out a YouTube channel that is amazing, is 1 Minute Papers. They do all sorts of AI research into something that I don't do any work in, which is video game graphics and physics. And again, you'll learn you'll learn a little bit more about how AI machine learning, it works in different ways and stuff like that. So yeah, YouTube is a big thing. AI using LLMs as well is a big thing in learning in today's age. So yeah, make sure you stay up to date. And in terms of cheat sheets, I think you'll cheat sheets essentially only work when you already know something and then you're just trying to remember something. So maybe if you're trying to get your Python up to scratch a bit more, I would say, or maybe have a pandas cheat sheet ready. So you're ready to explore data, melt it, pivot it, whatever you want to do with it. Blogs, I like video content. I'm not really a reading person. So I would tend to look at a blog if I'm researching a specific thing. So like, there are plenty of blogs out there from companies that do AI products that will talk a little bit about their research and stuff. So yeah, I guess, yeah, that's a good one to look at. How long did it take you for you to bring this model from scratch to live? How did you decide when the model is good enough to be used in production? Okay, very good question. So I would say it took about maybe 2 months end to end. And by the time it went into production, we were already testing with client data and actively reviewing and actively doing quality checking. And I think at one point it just became apparent that the model was doing, in terms of its accuracy, it was high enough, and it felt like, I'm using the word felt, which is anecdotally, I know that's a bit of an oxymoron, but essentially we were using it on live clients and we were doing quality checks. And the stuff that the model got right was really insightful. And some of the stuff, and the stuff that it got wrong was either minimal or it was explainable. And it was something that was expected and could be improved on. And the act of improvement was a small enough act that we didn't need to rethink about the entire model as a whole. It was just part of the continuous process. So there is a bit of a factor of letting go and learning to be okay with that and just carrying on improving it as part of that process. I am still skeptical and yet to be convinced that AI can get genuine survey data back from humans. Okay, well, if you are in the world of surveys, one of the biggest problems, I guess, within this domain is, and something that we hear from a lot of employees, is that, okay, the annual survey is done and no actions have been taken from it. And so, if that's the baseline of where the survey world sits at. And so when you then start to merge the world of quantifiable data and free text data together, the relationships you see between them, the extraction of insights that happen, and in our case, the fact that we've got a framework that's based on organizational psychology. It's not just, we're not just willy-nilly extracting data from the free text. There is an actual science behind it. That is, those things working together, that's really what's powerful. One more question. With your level of skills, experience, learning, have seen AI in depth way than most of us. How does the future of the job market look for digitally qualified people? Oh, by the way, it is too many papers. It's not one, but it's too many papers. You're right. Okay. First and foremost, AI is very much in trend now. So I think sometimes it's very easy to follow the trend and follow what everyone else is doing and then kind of not know where you end up. So that is kind of the risk warning of this. And I think if you're asking me, where do I think AI sits in terms of people that work within data, within the data world, AI sits right at the very end of a long chain of transformations that have been happening for the past X amount of years. Machine learning models are nothing new. Elections were being predicted back in the 1950s in America using card punchers and and old machines the size of rooms. And so in terms of the application of algorithms to data, that's been something that's been going on for nearly 100 years. And if we're, and I'm talking about using computers, and if we're talking about algorithms as a whole, that's been in the backbone of human history. So that's something to know. I think what's interesting is that learning probably is a big part of the AI landscape when it comes to jobs. I think what we're seeing right now at the moment is certainly a lot of people. There's a lot of demand for data analysts, and there's a lot of demand for data analysts with data science skills. That's growing right now. I think generative AI is going to be something that's going to be maturing and ticking over in the background for a little while. So if you're more veering towards a let's say DevOps type of route, or where you are using computer science to help linking different AI services to solve solutions, I guess that's going to be in there for a little while. I will say, I think if you are a data scientist and you want to use specifically data science skills and not so much move into generative AI, I think the opportunity is looking at specific domains. I think there is a lot of data out there that is sitting untouched, that is not part of the web crawl wiki data set, that generative AI doesn't really have a use for, that I think probably needs to be looked at. So there's a lot of niches there that I think need to probably be looked at. So the most responsible thing I can say to you is make sure you're flexible enough to stay learning and understand how all of those concepts link together, and be ready to jump towards those domains and things that you have an interest in. That's the best answer I could give. 2 months was quick. Yes, it was whirlwind. What's the next step for you? The journeys are inspiring. Any new skills or projects you're excited about? Yes. So as part of our data strategy into AI, and kind of the last thing I touched on in the presentation, which is the compounded interest. And we are essentially going in all guns blazing, and we're going to be creating a whole bunch of different machine learning models that are going to work in conjunction with each other and really help to analyze and structure the information within our domain. Can't really say too much more, but that is the kind of what I'm looking forward to the most. Yeah, I think now that we've, this was the project that we kind of started everything. So the thing that I'm most looking forward as well is to kind of mature that project. I think that project itself has its own kind of next development, which is we want to make it accessible in multiple languages. We want to add additional NLP techniques that will help extract more insights and stuff like that. So yeah. So in terms of that project, that's what's next. Any new skills? I mean, I'm trying to think. Right now, I've kind of been so the package I used for my prototype was Keras, because you're able to define a neural network a lot quicker and a lot easier using Keras, if I'm honest. That's my personal opinion. But I've started moving on to PyTorch, which means you can start playing around with a lot more parameters. So that's, I'm currently learning that. I'm currently also doing some research around embedding models. I really want to try and do a domain-specific one, which would really put us, out there and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of where I am with that. And last but not least, I would say I want to, within our company, I really want to mature the collaboration. So, the initial collaboration for this project was, the background of building this, given the fact that we only had 2 months to do it, was really kind of a big factor. But actually, I really want to mature that collaboration and work with, the other teams more and improve on that. Okay. I don't see any more questions unless there's anyone else that wants to add anything to the chat. I think I'm going to end the webinar, if that's okay with everyone. I'm going to give it one more minute. No, thank you guys. Thank you for joining. It's been exciting. And, I've already started doing it, but, if you've got any more questions, don't hesitate to reach me on LinkedIn. Any more questions like that, or anything you want to know about the course or NLP in general, let me know. All right, guys, I'm gonna end the webinar. Can we put yes? You can add me on LinkedIn, and maybe I might start doing some blogs myself or something like that if people are interested. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.